Hello and welcome to this video. In this one I want to talk about a little bit about the new MLC M plugin from Bogren Digital. And at first, let's have a listen to this little track here. So this was the little track. I hope you like it. And this project was originally for my Trivium Drums demo. And I found this track is cool. Let's use it for the MLC demo as well. And let's go straight to the guitar tracks. And as you can see here, I have just two simple DI tracks. And here is nothing going on, just the plugin. And on the group track, here is my DI group track. Let's deactivate all the plugins. And let's talk about what I have done here. And for the first track, let's solo this track. Let's use this section here. And for the first track, I used a preset. It's called It's a Steel. It's from Jacob Herman from Top Floor Studios. Awesome producer. And I tweaked it just a little bit. I think I used a little bit more gain here. And I reduced the mid-range a little bit as well. We have two overdrive pedals here. And we have two Dynamic 57 microphones and the cabinet. And a little bit of the EQ here to reduce some of the around 1K frequency. And of course, for the rhythm guitars, no reverb and no delay here. And this track alone sounds like this. Let's put it back in the center. It's very tight, very clean mid-range. I really like these. So let's go to the next track here. And here I also used a preset from Jacob Herman. It's called the Definer. You can find this here. And in this one I deactivated the EQ because I don't want this extra mid-range here. And I think I also reduced the mid-range a little bit and a little bit less gain. And here again, 2 overdrive pedals are engaged. And of course, no reverb and no delay. And for the cab section, we have a custom cab here from Bogren Digital. And we have the Ribbon 160 here. And this track alone sounds like this. And both together, they sound like this. Sounds awesome in my opinion. And now let's have a look at my group track here. The first thing is the Fab Filter EQ, and let's put this thing on here. And just a few dips in the mid-range here, not too narrow, not too surgical, just for an overall more mid-range balance, let's say. And let me show you this. Especially on the single note riffs, you can hear these mid-range shifts. And what we are doing now is really dangerous, to be honest. We listen to the guitars in solo. Most of the time I do this with the whole mix context. So let's do this. And the thing is here, because your brain and your ears are constantly reacting to these frequency shifts. And when you listen for the guitars in solo for too long, your brain constantly reacts to these frequency shifts. And so that's the reason why I do these dips or boosts or cuts, whatever. I do this almost always with the whole mix context. Because then you can clearly hear with the other instruments, with the drums, with the bass, is the mid-range too much? Is it a little bit boxy? And in this case, to be honest, without the EQ, I also like this sound, but the mid-range is a little bit too much for my taste, especially with the drums together and the bass. Yeah, that was the first EQ, and the next thing is the SSL X EQ, and let's put this on here. And these are a few cuts, more narrow, more surgical, and the cool thing with the SSL EQ is you can choose between different types of EQs here, more narrow or more surgical, and you can choose with the anchor, the settings, and these cleaning up the mid-range a little bit, and these two are very important. So let's have a listen without the EQ. And as you can hear, there is a very drastic shift in the overall sound. This one is extremely important. Let's deactivate this one. And also this one is also very important. This one is at 2.2K and this one is around 4K. These are always some problematic frequencies around 2K and around 4K, and I really like this EQ for these narrow cuts, and I like the fab filter more for overall processing. And the last thing on the signal chain here is the refinement plugin from Brainworks, and this is also for the high mid and high frequencies of these nasty little whistling sounds. So let's turn it off. So when you turn this thing off, the difference is also drastic. You can hear all these little whistling high mid and high frequency sounds. And sometimes I use this with the mix on 100, but sometimes also the mix on 50, and then you can fine-tune this a little bit better. And that's it for the guitar sound. So let's solo these again. Now let's move on to the lead guitars and let's jump to this little solo here. Sounds like this. And for the amp, I used the default setting and a little bit more gain, definitely more mid-range for a lead sound. And I used the green overdrive pedal here. For the cabinet, I think also the default preset, the 57 and the ribbon 160. And for the EQ, a little bit less low end here. And of course, for a nice singing lead sound, a little bit of delay. I turned off the reverb here because I have the black hole as a send, and let me show you this. Here is my black hole send, the Eventide black hole reverb. I love this one. And followed by an EQ just to narrow the frequency of the reverb a little bit. And yeah, alone it sounds like this. And also I have a Pro MB here, a multiband compressor. And this one is especially for low noises and low rumble for the lead sound, because sometimes when you move your hand above the strings, there are some noises, some low rumble, and also the notes on the lower strings. Sometimes it's a little bit too much, but not all the time, and that's why I used the multiband compressor here. And as you can see, it reacts more to the lower notes but it doesn't react that much to the higher notes. So let's listen to this section here. We have two melodies going on with the lead sound, and at first let's have a listen in solo. And for these ones I used similar lead sounds, also the default preset, definitely more gain, more mid-range, also the green overdrive pedal, but here I used the 57 alone, and the EQ is doing nothing here, and here I used the reverb and the delay inside the plugin, and I think the same for the other track here. Yes, the 57 alone, the green overdrive pedal, more gain and definitely more mid-range. And I also use the multiband compressor for each track for the same reason. And on the lead guitar group track, I have two EQs here. This one with the low and high cut, it puts the frequency into the right spot. And the second one, just one narrow cut around 1.2K and a very broad boost at around 800. In the whole mix, the difference is not that big, to be honest, but it cleans up the lead sound a little bit. And yeah, that's it for the lead guitars. Now let me show you something with the drums. These are the Tervium drums, and as you can see here, I rendered all the tracks out to WAV files, and also the kick drum and the snare to mono tracks. And let's have a look what I have done here on the single tracks. As you can see here, there's not that much going on. Just one EQ for the kick drum and some EQs and transient designer for the toms. And that's it for the single tracks. So let's jump to this section here. And for the single kick track, I used also the SSL X EQ and just a nice low shelf here, and not that much, just 1.8 dB, and of course this to gives the kick drum a really nice low end. And let's move on to the other tracks. Let me show you what I have done with the toms here. So maybe let's go to the beginning of the song, because we have a nice tom fill here. No, not here. And for the toms, let's open up this mixer. As you can see here, for tom 1 I did nothing, because I think tom 1 is not used in this track. but for tom 2 to tom 5 I used some EQs here, and this one just for some mid-range. And with this one I want to reduce the first overtone of the toms. So let's solo tom 2 for example. So here is without the EQ. And another cool tip is you can do this with the transient designer after the EQ, and then you put down the sustain completely. And then you just hear the attack with almost no sustain, and then you can find the first overtone better. And don't forget to set the sustain back. For this one I used around -3 for the sustain, and I left the attack at 0 here because we don't need more attack for the toms, in my opinion. And the same for tom number 3. Let me show you this one. And here the same, the first overtone, and here a little bit of extra mid-range. And here also followed by a transient designer with a little bit less sustain here. And I think the difference is more drastic with the floor toms, with the first overtone. Let me show you this one here. Yeah. And sometimes for the floor toms I reduced the sustain a little bit more, because the sustain of the floor toms, it really can mess up your low end for that particular part of the song. Of course you can use automation or multiband compression or whatever, but for me sometimes with a transient designer and turn down the sustain a little bit, it really helps for that tom fill. And that's it for the toms, and on the single tracks there is nothing else. So let's switch to the group tracks here. And here is my drum group track, and I have my favorite bass compressor for drums. This is the VSC2 from Brainworks. So let's turn off the EQ at first. And I use some pretty basic settings for bass compression, a ratio 4:1. And I used also the sidechain filter on 90 Hz. And it gives the drums a little bit more smack, but not too much, and makes the drums a little bit more compact. And for the EQ, nothing special, but a very broad boost in the mid-range, just 1 dB, and here a nice low shelf. And that's it for the drums. And now let me show you the bass track here a little bit. And this is the Eurobass 3 from Submission Audio. And I also rendered this out to a mono wave track. And let's see on my bass group track, these are deactivated. So I can show you the setting on the bass track itself. And here I used also the SSL X EQ. Just a nice little low shelf here and a little dip at around 800. And for the bass group track, the first thing is the FAB filter EQ, a low and high cut, here around 20 and here around 9K to put the bass in the right spot. And here we have a nice boost at around 100. And here we have a very broad dip at around 55 Hz. This is to make room for the kick drum, of course. And here are some other dips. And together with the whole mix. And the next thing is again the X EQ from SSL. Just another dips, a few, let's say, annoying frequencies. And the next thing is the multiband compressor. And this one is for sidechaining, but not with the kick drum and the bass. Because for me, I really don't like this sidechain kick and bass thing, at least for metal tracks. But what I like is to sidechain the toms into the bass track. And that's what I did here. So let's also solo the drum track. And as you can see here, whenever the toms are playing, they reducing the frequency range up to 155 of the bass track. And this is just when the toms are playing and nothing else. So let's switch to another part. So as you can see here, there is nothing going on, but on the tom fills, and this is really helpful, especially with the massive low end from the floor toms. And this cleans up your tom fills together with the bass track very well. I really like this method. And the last thing on the signal chain for the bass track is the good old L1 limiter. And this is just for reducing the dynamics of the bass a little bit. So you have a very flat bass track. And yeah, that's it for the bass track. And the last thing is my mix track here. Let me show you this. Let's turn off the plugins, except for the limiter here. And the first thing is a FAB filter EQ, nothing special, a low and high cut, a little high shelf here, and some minor adjustments here in the frequency range around 2K and around 200. And the next thing is the bus compressor from SSL. But here also nothing special, a ratio 2:1, so not too high. We can also use 4:1, but in this case I used 2:1, and now I see I can drive this a little bit more. With my bus compression, I try to not get over these 4 dB here, because above 4 dB is a little bit too much sometimes, or most of the time, to be honest. But in this area between 1 and 4 dB, it's always a good spot for bus compression. And the next thing is fat filter Saturn here, just for a little bit of saturation. But I divided the frequency bands here. I made a cut at 205, and here I used the clean tape with minimum drive 5%, and for the other frequency range I used the warm tape with the drive at around 10%. And the last thing on the MixBus here is Golfos. And this one, again, not too much, just minor adjustments. And as you can see in this single note section, it stays very flat. Yeah, again, I use this one just a little bit. And the last thing on my stereo out is Flatline 2. This is my favorite clipper limiter. I used it in the hybrid setting with a ceiling minus 0.5 and the respective threshold, of course. And that's it for this video. I hope you liked this little walkthrough, and yeah, thanks for watching. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want. And thanks for watching, and see you on the next one. Bye.